Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and today we got a little bit of a video we're going to be making, and it's going to be very educational, I think. One of my colleagues came up to me very recently and he said, you know, I think with all the videos that you do that people just don't understand how passionate you are about dirt track racing, how much you want it to succeed. Seems like a lot of these videos that you put out, even though you're passionate and people see where you're coming from, they just don't understand the limits you're willing to push, the things you're willing to do to help this sport succeed and grow. I came back to him and I'm like, well, you're right. I need to come out with a video that actually explains why and where I am coming from, because it seems like a lot of people just don't understand. Most of my critics out there have been mad at me because of my feuds with Larson, but something I think people need to understand when I'm pointing out these guys is it is a great thing to see Kyle Larson has success in a stock car. But it is a sad, detrimental thing to me that he has to go do that instead of run a sprint car full time for the money. So to me, the dirt track racing fans out there need to get their priorities in line. If you're a true fan of dirt track racing, your priorities of Kyle Larson being successful in stock cars should not trump the success of dirt track racing. Celebrating these dirt track drivers in stock cars is something that's been going on for only about 30 years. And the sport of dirt track racing really hasn't benefited that much. We need to support our sport. While some of their racing may have one or two great races, our racing has great racing every single week. And the drivers behind the wheels of these cars do not have a high school and college to determine their excellency behind the wheel of these machines. A lot of people are great race car drivers. Kyle Larson is a great race car driver, but he gets beat by some of our guys sometimes. And I just think we need to start celebrating our form of motorsports, pushing and promoting our form of motorsports, making that a huge deal to us, more so than how good a sprint car guy does out there on the track versus the stock car guys. So that is all I wanted to say about that. Now there is a big issue. There's two ways to look at dirt track racing, and I see where a lot of you people are coming from. You view it as a minor league sport. That's what it just is. That's what it's become, especially here in the last 30 years. We've been placed into a minor league section of the house. You know, Mr. Stock Car probably don't want a lot of people to see late models and sprint cars. That would be a bad thing, because whether you believe it or not, we are a competitor for sponsorships, for fans, for dollars, for all these things. Like I say, not too many people know of a sprint car late model. They believe in aliens and ghosts more than a sprint car and late model. And if they had the opportunity to see it in our action that we know is great, they would probably like it. But if you're a competitor against that with your own form of motorsports, why would you want that to happen? But I could use money to put you under my wing, and you can be something with me. Come on, be my buddy, marry me, as somebody said recently. And that's where we get to two different perspectives on what this dirt track thing is. And here's the deal. You can view it as minors as much as you want to, and that's your big goal, is to make this the minor leagues, send them up to the major leagues, all that crap. That's a baseball terminology. You know, Cardinals fans, I'm a Blue Jays and Rangers fan personally. A good battle we had a few years ago in the playoff. Hey, that's how you want to view it. That's how you want to view it. But I don't view it that way. Instead of looking at this motorsports world as a baseball world, how about we look at it as the fighting world in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s? You know, we have a problem today where not a lot of people are racing fans. But is that necessarily our fault in dirt track racing? You know, the fighting world was a very interesting situation. You know, back in the early 90s to late 90s and early 2000s, in the fighting world, if you wanted to be a big name, you had to go to boxing. It didn't matter really what kind of genre you were in. There were little bitty communities that you could go fight and be famous in. But if you wanted to become world famous, you had to go be a boxer. Now, the boxing world turned into a lot of political things, PC, and not a lot of people were fighting fans anymore. And they weren't fighting fans because they weren't boxing fans. A guy sat back, and there was this thing at the time called cage fighting. You know, it was at the time some barbaric sport, something that, you know, you never saw on TV unless somebody got killed or hurt. A bunch of rednecks, a bunch of, you know, people just driving in circles. Nobody ever heard about that sport. It wasn't some mainstream deal. It was just off to the side. It was underneath. There was this guy that came along and said, hey, our guys are just as good. Our one good guy shouldn't have to learn to be a boxer. It's a different discipline. We're sideways at 140 miles an hour. Yeah, we're not on those asphalt tracks. But it takes a hell of a will man to do this in the cage. And people came up to him and said, man, fighting's just not big anymore. That's the problem. And this man sat back and said, no. People are fans of fighting. They've always been fans of racing. It's just that they're not fans of that type of fighting. And then they started getting that attention. They started promoting themselves as the best. Hey, our guys are good too. And that, my friends, was MMA. And what is MMA today? Bigger than boxing? Some could argue. At least in the fighting world, everybody had an equal opportunity. Right now, we're celebrating the one guy who goes from the cage to boxing. And that's really all we care about. Some of us care about, the weekly guys in there, fighting in the cage. But these pop culture celebrity turned into stock car racers are all that matters in our one cage guy that goes and boxes. He's the big deal. And then when they come back and fight in the cage, it's even bigger of a deal. Oh, and then when they bring their boxing gloves and get in the cage at that dirt race track there in Ohio, that's huge when the boxers come to box in the cage. Come on now. So that's my perspective. I view dirt track racing right now as the MMA before it became big. It's a hell of a product. The talent is off the wall. It's a different discipline, but it's very exciting. It's entertaining. And there's a lot of fighting fans out there that would like our fight. And you know what happened there? Boxing really didn't like the rise of dirt track racing, that's future tense. Mr. Stock Car didn't like the rise of MMA. Boxing didn't understand though. Yes, they lost some glamour. Yes, they lost attention through the rise of MMA. But you know what ended up happening? America became fighting fans again. And not only did they like MMA, they started watching boxing too because they were fans of fighting. They had some diversity in their options of what fighting was. And MMA was really entertaining. That's exactly what can happen in how I perceive the racing world currently if dirt track racing becomes the MMA of the racing world. Yeah, a lot of people will like it. Yeah, a lot of people may not like your product anymore, Mr. Stock Car. But you know what? You're going to end up getting more fans as well because dirt racing breeds race fans. It's just there's not too many people out there right now that know it even exists. And then you also have a lot of people who would rather this be a minor league. So those are your two perspectives out there. Some people want to be married. And then there's the other perspective which I stand behind. And if you take these guys fighting in the cage week in and week out, and you show them to the world of what they do and the shows that they put on, that America will become race fans again. Because in America, there's plenty of race fans. They're just not stock car fans. And you know what? If we can turn regular people into race fans, that helps you too, Mr. Stock Car. You just won't be able to sustain your power trip that you've been on for 30 years, ever since Indy went down and you became number one. So anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's my opinion. That's what I have to say. I love this sport very much. I'm just not okay with it being viewed as the minor leagues. Definitely not okay with it being married to a competitor. And I'm also not okay with these guys who can put on a hell of a show, who are damn good in their own discipline, having to get killed in the cage for anyone to know they exist. They deserve to be hoisted in front of the country when they're winning races, when they're putting on shows, when they're displaying their talent in their discipline. With that being said, give a like, give a share, give a comment, spread the word, Dirt Track State of Mind. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're going as much and as far as we can. And somebody asked me last week, do you have a date on when you're planning for this to all work? And I said, no, I have no date to when I plan for it to succeed. When you make a date for when it should succeed, all you did was make a quit date. And there ain't no quitting in me.